So good morning, everyone. Delighted to see you all here. Very special day, very special place, very special Dharma, that I can assure you. Before I go into the content, I'd like to just give you a very brief overview of what to expect this morning, not in terms of content, but format. So I will speak for about an hour, and then immediately following that, then Yangshan Ursula will give a brief presentation. I think you'll find it very meaningful. It'll just be maybe 10 minutes or so. No, the next one, after I speak. Then a meditation. We'll have a one Gatika meditation, 24 minutes, focusing right on the very core of the teachings of the Dharma that I'll share with you. And then Yangshan will give a short presentation. Again, I would really encourage you to stay for it. You will find it very worth your while. It'll be just about 10 minutes or so. And then we'll have the remaining time for question and answer, for comments, dialogue. So that's what's in store for us. So plan to go roughly until about noon. To give very briefly a bit of context for today's presentation, this is now the 6th lecture in a series that began early this year that was titled Believers, Contemplatives, and the Future of Human Civilization. So that should catch your attention, right? And over the course of these lectures, usually about once every 6 weeks or so, then I followed a sequence of the cultivation of 6 types of intelligence. We call it the sixfold matrix. And very, very briefly, the first is cognitive intelligence, conation as in desire, aspirations, motivation, values, goals, that our desires and intentions are wise and really conducive to our own and others' well-being. That would be cognitive wisdom. That's free will, by the way, to make choices that are really conducive to your own and others' well-being. That's not metaphysical. But do we have the freedom to make such decisions, to follow such desires that truly work out well? So that's cognitive, not a very well-known adjective in English, but it should be. It's very important. We begin with cognitive intelligence, being wise in our desires. The second one is ethics, ethical intelligence. Without ethics, we don't even have a civilization. And some may wonder whether we're losing it right now. But no ethics, no civilization. So we focus on the cultivation of ethical intelligence, having the intelligence to behave by way of body, speech, and mind in ways that are truly conducive to our own and others' well-being. Well, all the world's problems would be solved if everybody cultivated an ethical intelligence. But once we get our bearings, we get our orientation, what's my life about? It's about having wise desires and leading a meaningful, wholesome, virtuous way of life. Then we need to be focused, because it's so easy, especially in this modern era, to become distracted. ADHD is kind of the norm, rather than something, to give to our kids and hit them over the head with a pound of drugs. So developing attentional intelligence. Useful, yeah? Everybody can use that. Then on that basis, cognitive intelligence. Not the same as IQ, but cognitive intelligence is something that can be cultivated, and it enables us to distinguish between what is reality presenting to us from moment to moment, what's real, what's happening, and what am I projecting upon reality, my assumptions, preconceptions, beliefs, and so forth. It's okay to project, but it's not so okay not to be able to distinguish between what we're projecting on reality and what reality is dishing up from moment to moment. And we do that a lot. But I thought, but I assumed, really? We have this little wake-up call. And then we go right back down into the delusion of conflating our imaginations with what is reality dishing up to us. Cognitive intelligence. Wouldn't it be wonderful if all politicians had that? Because they have so much influence, right? I'm not speaking with ridicule, but they have so much influence that if they are cognitively confused, that's going to have ramifications for everybody. So then, cognitive, ethical, attentional, cognitive, and then today, emotional intelligence. Now, Dan Goleman, a dear and old friend of mine, brought this to the public attention. There are now numerous books on emotional intelligence, and I think all of us would like to have more of it. Be more intelligent in the way we experience emotions, the way we express our emotions, and both the experience and the expression of them in such a way that actually does some good, benefits ourselves and others. Emotional intelligence, being emotionally wise. And that's what today's talk will be about. But we'll see it'll be taking a somewhat different tack than the many very meaningful books that have been written about emotional intelligence, kind of starting with Dan Goleman and another dear friend of mine, respected friend of mine, I'm happy to say he's still alive, Professor Paul Ekman, wrote a wonderful book called Emotions Revealed, based upon like 30 years of research, hardcore, really sharp research, and telling us how can you recognize your emotions, recognize afflictive emotions from beneficial ones, and so on. But the approach we'll be taking here is going to be taking this theme of emotional intelligence and drenching it in the ambrosia of Dharma. So it will have very, very deep roots. You'll see what I mean by this very shortly. And then finally, 6 weeks from now, we'll turn to the last lecture in this series on spiritual intelligence. And I won't talk about that right now. We have our hands full already. This is the sequence, though, from the cognitive through emotional today and then spiritual 6 weeks from now, is still part of this overarching theme that should be very much in the forefront of the minds of every one of the 8 billion people on the planet. Because we, around the world, 8 billion of us, we have brought to the environment a catastrophe the likes of which have not been seen since this giant meteor hit 66 million years ago and wiped out about 75% of the life on the planet. We are quickly catching up to that kind of a destruction of a meteor, right? But we did it, and we've been doing it incrementally and increasingly over the last 150 years, since the rise of the Industrial Revolution and so on. And accelerating since the time I was born, 1950. You can just look at all the destruction we have wrought on our planet, on other species, on the ecosphere. And we're not slowing down. That's the problem. We're not slowing down. And we know about it. So we wonder, how can we be so foolish as to destroy the only home we have, and knowing what the solutions are, and then not implementing them? Well, that's not a rhetorical question. There are very good reasons why we are behaving so foolishly. And I always include myself in this. And so we turn to this, the future of human civilization. One could ask, is there a future for human civilization at this point? Because it is open to question. Human civilization as we know it, will it be there for our grandchildren? That's an open question. We don't know, because we're certainly doing too little too late so far. Which means we need to dig deeper than simply more legislation and more electric cars and better, cleaner industries and so forth, and everybody drive an electric car. That's all very well, and it's not even remotely going to be enough. We need to dig deeper. What is it that we've done over the last 150 years, unlike the first 250,000 years of human existence on this planet, 250,000, 250,000 years. That's how long we've been here. But now, over the last 150 years, we brought about this destruction. What happened? Did we suddenly, we, the 8 million, suddenly become incredibly stupid? What happened? And I will suggest an answer to that. Enough of rhetorical questions. None of them actually were rhetorical. So I begin with the notes, which will be shared with everyone after this talk. And I've already introduced the term meta-crisis, which I didn't coin, but it's not just global climate change. It's a whole cluster of crises all happening at the same time, any one of which could be a knockout punch to human civilization. But take all of them together, and you have a meta-crisis here. So I sometimes read the notes, and I'll be very concise here, because we have a lot of wonderful material to deal with. And I'll simply read this: for human civilization to overcome the current meta-crisis and truly flourish in the future, perhaps as never before, there must be a global shift from the meaningless triad of scientific materialism, everything boils down to matter and the emergent properties of matter, hedonism, all of our happiness is to be found outside, so let's all get up and go and scurry out and get there, and the first guy gets more than everybody else. Hedonism. And then consumerism, that the way to find happiness is to consume as much as you can. And the government will, in the United States, will cheer us on. The consumer index is going up. Yay! We're destroying the planet even faster than we thought. So that triad is profoundly interrelated. Materialism, we're all just robots, and brains are the agent, and there's no free will, and you're just living here, scurrying around, trying to have a good time, and then you're dead, and then you're obliterated, and have a nice day. But that worldview is about the most depressing worldview I can imagine. Why do so many people accept it? Why does it saturate the media, government policy, education, as if it's simply a scientific truth, when it's not even remotely so? Well, it has its appeal, scientific materialism. It has its appeal that, we'll live here for a while, we get old, we die, but then rest in peace. Rest in peace, show's over. You have only one life to live, so, get as much happiness as you can. This is what the materialists were saying in Greece 2,500 years ago. It's what the Charvakas, the materialists in India, were telling 2,500 years ago. And it has an appeal. It makes you comfortable living a meaningless life. Because after all, when you're dead, and show's over, and whatever you did has no consequences for you. That's your kid's problem. So this is a catastrophic triad that I think lies at the root of why we are behaving so incredibly foolishly for the last 150 years. It needs to be replaced, not with one religion or one philosophy or one political system, but I'm suggesting that this meaningless triad needs to be replaced by a meaningful triad, which is deeply saturated in fact, as in science, but deep contemplative truth as well. And this is the view of a participatory universe. We're not just an accident. Chemicals got together and kaboom, we got some life, and then kaboom and consciousness. It's a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale a lot of people believe, but so do a lot of kids believe in Santa Claus. But it's still a fairy tale. A participatory universe, this is absolutely cutting-edge quantum mechanics, and it's widespread, mainstream. They haven't quite figured out what it means, because if it's a participatory universe, what's the nature of the mind, and that they don't know. But the participatory universe, that we're not just casual bystanders, we're not chemical scum on some little planet on the outer periphery of the Milky Way. The view of a participatory universe, where we're fully participating in the ecosphere and in the universe. We count, we matter. The prioritization, the second, there's another triad coming. The prioritization of eudaimonia, the Greek term, genuine well-being, over hedonism, that all of our happiness comes from outside. Eudaimonia doesn't come from outside. You can't buy it, you can't find it, you can't run after it, you can't pursue it. But you can cultivate it. As St. Thomas Aquinas said, the whole point of the political life, the pursuit of hedonism, is for the sake of the contemplative life, which is eudaimonia. That's the meaning of life, not how much good can you get before you die and give everything away, or have everything grabbed from you. And thirdly, the cultivation of a meaningful and beneficial way of life over a life of consumerism. So on 3 points, we're going absolutely into the mainstream. And we need to crush the mainstream. I don't mean crush any human being, but that triad is utterly toxic. So a meaningful life, man's search for meaning, right? What is a meaningful life? And of course there are many views, and I'm not so pretentious as to say here's the right answer, but I can tell you some criteria that are meaningful to me. I'll just pass that on and we'll move on. But I'll speak very personally, because leading a meaningful life has been enormously important to me ever since I hit my late teens. Actually, more important than anything else. I wanted my life to be meaningful, and I wanted my life to be true, based in reality and not some very pleasant fiction. The pleasant fiction that when I die, I just go poof and go into Never Never Land. That's a fiction. A lot of people find it very appealing. A lot of religions have a lot of appealing beliefs. But if they're not true, then what's the point? So a life of meaning, a life of truth. That's been my ideal for the last 50 years. Here's a few criteria. They work for me. You can try them on. If they don't fit, throw them out. But a meaningful life would necessarily entail the cultivation of genuine well-being, and not just getting more stuff. That would be integral to it. A meaningful life must be one that is imbued with virtue. The virtues that we all recognize: kindness, patience, generosity, empathy, wisdom. That's common currency. But if your life isn't virtuous, it's not meaningful. Insofar as your life is virtuous, it is meaningful. It's a gradient there. And then finally, what is so striking about us humans is that we're so intelligent. Now, we can be ridiculously nuts while at the same time being intelligent. It's called afflictive intelligence. But we're extravagantly intelligent. And no evolutionary biologist has ever explained why we are so intelligent, so much more than we possibly need for procreation, survival and procreation. That doesn't take much. Alligators are good at it, but they're not very bright. We're very intelligent, but what are we doing with our intelligence? Getting more stuff, getting the latest iPhone? Is that what we're here for? Consuming as much as we can and then dying with a big happy smile? I got a lot of stuff. You know. That ain't intelligent, that's stupid. So the third one is cultivating wisdom. Philosophia, the love of wisdom. And if we're not cultivating wisdom, then what do we have this frontal cortex for? What do we have our intelligence for? Imagination, language skills, memory, creativity. What's that for? Just to make better technology? Or is it to really understand the nature of our existence in the world around us? Genuine happiness, virtue, wisdom. That does it for me. Try it on. If it doesn't fit, find another definition. But now this crucial point, which is, I'm delighted to say it's universal. There's nothing unique about this to any religion or philosophy or to modern science. And that's a distinction. I'm going back to cognitive intelligence before I leap into emotional intelligence. Because if we don't cultivate cognitive intelligence, the first one, then emotional intelligence will never happen, or it won't be sustainable. Just true. A distinction between what the Greeks called eudaimonia, genuine well-being, and hedonia. Genuine well-being and mundane pleasure, right? And so I'd like to, and of course these are defined somewhat differently by Aristotle, by Socrates, by the Buddha, by St. Augustine, and so forth. But as a scholar, I have my PhD in comparative religion, I have found that this distinction is made in all of the great religions of the world, with a lot of common ground. Of course they have differences, but it's not confined to religion. Socrates was brilliant in his distinction between eudaimonia, hedonia. So was Aristotle. So was St. Augustine. And now, over the last 20 years or so, then modern science, modern psychology, positive psychology, has jumped into it, and they're bringing their own insights, a freshness of a scientific perspective on the same thing, and saying these two are different. Genuine well-being and simply stimulus-driven pleasure. But what is the difference? And not only to understand it intellectually, but experientially. So hedonia, or hedonic pleasure, or mundane pleasure, we're all very familiar with this, but so are all animals. All sentient beings are striving for happiness, wanting to be free of pain. From the most primitive to the most sophisticated, advanced. Even the Buddha wanted to find happiness and be free of suffering, and he succeeded, right? But what exactly do I mean by hedonia now? It's a nice Greek term, has no baggage that comes with it. Hedonic pleasure, mundane pleasure. It's a kind of pleasure that can be pursued, and it can be derived from what we get from the world. And it's dependent upon pleasant sensory and mental stimulation. So in the pursuit of happiness, go out and get it. Like there's some happiness out there, okay, on your mark, get set, go, and let's all run after it. And one gets bigger share, and one gets smaller share, and one gets a gargantuan share, like $100 billion worth of share. And other ones are just struggling by on $1 or $2 a day. So it's a big race, and it's competitive, and it leads to friction, and it leads to conflict, and it leads to war, because it's competitive by nature. It's out there, whether it's tangible things like money, or whether it's reputation, or power, or status. There's only so much out there, and if somebody gets more, somebody else gets less. And the person who got less doesn't like it, whether it's a poor person or a poor country, they don't like it. And they'll look at the rich ones and say, we want to overcome you, we want to catch up to you and beat you. By nature competitive. Hedonic pleasure, hedonia. by nature competitive, and by nature fundamentally unsatisfying. We look at the richest people on the planet. You know who they are. You know what they all want? More. The richest countries in the world, what do they want? More. More wealth, more power, more prestige, more, and it's never enough. And some of those on the top of the mountain, you know, with only $80 billion, you know, kind of the runner-ups. Some of them are living on antidepressants, for heaven's sakes. Some are taking drugs, some take alcohol. And I say, what? That's people who are just barely on the poverty line could do. So there we are. We're very familiar with it, and we share it with all the animals. And then there's what the wise people know. But the wise all over the world, often in religion, historically mostly in religion, but also in philosophy, and now recently, science has jumped into it. So now we see there's no barriers here. There's no insiders and outsiders, believers and non-believers. But something that is satisfying, and it's called eudaimonia. In Buddhism, it's called the yangdape dewa, authentic well-being, or dambe dewa, sublime well-being. Everybody has their own terms for it in their own languages. But this is something the wise have discovered. And genuine well-being is something that is derived from what we bring to the world rather than what we get from the world, and is not dependent upon pleasant sensory or mental stimulation. Well, by and large, we live in the modern world, we're stimulation junkies. If we're not getting it from the sensory world, then we just feed ourselves with stimulation by rumination, thinking, and just kind of keep ourselves awake, but also dissatisfied. Genuine well-being has the potential to be profoundly satisfying, and it's never been competitive. There have been no eudaimonia wars. Never happened, because you can't get it from outside, and it's not a finite quantity. There's a finite quantity of everything on planet Earth, wealth, natural resources, and so forth. But there's no finite quantity of eudaimonia, and there's no competition. And so, what we get from the world, which we share with all the animals, because that's where they're looking, and what we bring to the world, and this may be uniquely human, this ability to cultivate, not to pursue or acquire, but to cultivate. Like a farmer cultivates a field, what's the field? The field is our own minds. So very briefly, there are three kinds of genuine well-being as understood in Buddhism. There's the well-being, and see if this resonates with you. This is Buddhism, but if it's true, it's true. It's not a Buddhist truth. If it's true, it's just true. So see whether this resonates. This is very experiential. And nothing that I say today is going to be faith-based or rely upon a doctrine or belief system. In other words, what I'll be sharing with you is universal Dharma. Universal Dharma. Throughout the 2 trillion galaxies in the world, this is Dharma for all of them. And it's not a new religion. Far be it from me. We don't need another religion. But this is something where you can find the roots in all of the world's religions, but you find it also in philosophy and in science. So there's no insiders and outsiders here. And so, 3 kinds of well-being. See if you can resonate with this. The well-being of having a clear conscience, and the well-being of contentment. That's one. A clear conscience according to your own rights. When you look back on your life, all of us have made mistakes, most likely. I certainly have. But if we make mistakes, recognize them, feel remorse for them, and then don't do it again, then lesson learned. The person who can get through life without making any mistakes, well, congrats to you, dude. But I don't know anybody like that, at least I'm not one of them. And so having a clear conscience, where we made mistakes, we clear them up, clean them up, and don't repeat them. And contentment, finding that you can be content with a finite amount of wealth and prestige and power. And you can be truly content in a very meaningful way. That's the first one. The second one is well-being gained through using the Sanskrit term samadhi. And samadhi is mental balance. It's composure of mind. It's being collected, poised, totally present, fully engaged with reality. That's samadhi. It means totally collected, samadhi, totally collected. This person's really present. This person, boy, when you're with him or her, you feel this person's really with you, and not scattered and not dozing off and not flaking out. Full-on engagement, full court press on reality. That's samadhi. and it entails all of the 6 types of intelligence that I mentioned before. And the final one is the supreme well-being of complete freedom from suffering and its causes through the cultivation of insight. Well, that's a lofty goal that many people never even consider. But what if it's a possibility? What if it's a possibility to have complete freedom from suffering and its causes? And in making that statement, what if those materialists are just dead wrong in assuming with blind faith that death means termination, lights out, you only have one life to live, so leave it, have a good time. What if they're wrong? They're just flat out wrong, because something else is true, and this truth has been established and reestablished countless times by contemplatives and by scientists and philosophers. Your own consciousness, this stream of consciousness, is a natural phenomenon like matter and energy. And like matter and energy, it's conserved. And you don't have any choice about it. You can't make matter turn into nothing, you can't take energy turn into nothing, and you can't make consciousness turn into nothing. So if you thought that was a possibility, sorry, you can believe whatever you like, but I'll just tell you the truth. That's not an option. And many of us, on occasion at least, wish it were. But reality is not multiple choice. It's not just whatever you like. Something is true. And I'll just tell you, you don't have to believe me. Why do you believe me? I'm nobody. But if your consciousness, individual consciousness, carries on, suddenly the notion of a participatory universe is a really, really big deal. Okay, that's it. Now, I began this series with reading the opening passages of one of my favorite suttas, or discourses, of the Buddha in the Pali canon. It's called the Kesamutti Sutta, or sometimes called Kalama Sutta. And it's a very famous sutra, and it begins with the whole exhortation by the Buddha for people to be skeptical, to question authorities, question hearsay, question doctrine, question sacred texts. It goes right through the whole roster. Question, do be skeptical. It's good for you to be skeptical when you hear about multiple religions or multiple worldviews, multiple political systems, philosophies, and so forth. Don't accept it just because your dad did, or the surrounding community did, or the government does, or the media does. Don't be like a dog that just like yapping with all the other dogs yap. But take responsibility for yourself and test it with your intelligence, with your experience. This is a man who's regarded as a founder of religion. That doesn't sound like a founder of religion to me. Founder of religion say, believe me, I'm something very special. And the Buddha was very special, but he said, don't accept anything I say out of mere devotion to me. How about that? Accept it only if you check it, like testing gold, to see, is this gold or is it fool's gold? And there's a lot of fool's gold out there. And so I began on that theme. Check it for yourself and find out what is truly conducive to your well-being, like delusion, craving, hostility. Is it helpful or not helpful? Virtuous, like the 4 immeasurables, helpful or not helpful, but know for yourself. This is where we draw the distinction between believers and contemplatives. There are a lot of believers out there. Nothing wrong with belief, but if you believe something wrong, that can really get you into trouble. So I began with the beginning of the sutta, and I'm just going to read through the end of the sutta that ties in directly to the contents for today. I'm just going to read it right through. So he's coming to the conclusion. Thus Kalamas, these are the people occupying this village of Kesaputta. Thus Kalamas, when we said, come Kalamas, do not go by oral tradition, and he gives a whole roster of things to be skeptical about, but when you know for yourselves, these things are wholesome. These things are blameless. These things are praised by the wise. These things, if accepted and undertaken, lead to welfare and happiness, then you should live in accordance with them. It is because of this that this was said. Radical empiricism and radical pragmatism, and no blind allegiance to any authority, obviously including the Buddha himself. And now he comes to the end. Then Kalamas, that noble disciple who is devoid of longing, as in craving, devoid of ill will, unconfused, introspective, ever mindful, dwells pervading 1 quarter, south, east, northwest, dwells pervading 1 quarter with a mind imbued with loving kindness, with a mind imbued with compassion, with a mind imbued with empathetic joy, with a mind imbued with impartiality. Likewise, the second quarter. So the first quarter is east, then south and west and north, all directions. Like one of those whirling irrigation, it just sprays in all directions. Thus above, and so likewise the second quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter, thus above, below, across, and everywhere, and to all as to himself, he dwells pervading the entire world with a mind imbued with impartiality, vast, exalted, measureless, without enmity and without ill will. That's the fourth of the four measurables. It's unconditional. The impartiality makes for unconditional loving kindness, unconditional compassion, unconditional empathetic joy. The universal Dharma, do you see any belief system in there? Thus, this noble disciple, Kalamas, whose mind is in this way, without enmity, without ill will, undefiled and pure, has won 4 assurances in this life. There are 4 things you can be totally certain of if you've oriented your life around these 4 immeasurables. What are these? The first assurance he has won is this. If there is another world, he means if there's an afterlife. If there isn't, he's already claimed, I know this for myself, but he's not expecting everybody to believe him just because he said so. But if there is an afterlife, a continuity of consciousness beyond death, if that's the case, and if there is the fruit and result of good and bad deeds, in other words, if there are moral consequences from behavior, not just whether we get caught or don't get caught in this lifetime, but carrying on to the future life, the hereafter, if that's the case. But he's saying if. He's saying, I encourage you to be skeptical, start right now. If that's the case, it is possible that with the breakup of the body after death, I will be reborn in a good destination in a heavenly world. It's possible. That's an assurance you can have. In other words, it won't turn out badly for you. Isn't that kind of a priori absolutely true? If you oriented a whole life about cultivating love and kindness and so forth, and there is an afterlife, you're not going to have some really terrible consequences. Oh, you were just too loving. You really, that compassion, I'm going to hammer you for that. It ain't going to happen. That's just too stupid to be true. That's the first assurance. The second assurance is one is this. If there is no other world, if I, the Buddha, made a great big boo-boo, and in fact you are annihilated when you die, he's saying, be skeptical. Have an open mind. If there is no other world, and there is no fruit and result of good and bad deeds, still, right here, in this meaningful life, I maintain myself in happiness, without enmity and ill will, free of trouble. In other words, you live a really meaningful life. If this is it, then make the best of it, not by consuming as much as you can, or acquiring as much stuff as you can, because you're going to lose everything anyway. But if this is it, how about living a life that's saturated by the 4 immeasurables? And if it's lights out, it's lights out. But boy, no regrets, because you've lived a good life, and you will die knowing that. You can die with a smile. That's the second assurance. The 2 more? What could they be? Let's find out. This is a page turner. The third assurance he has won is this. Suppose evil comes to one who does evil, as in an afterlife. Imagine that is true. Then when I have no evil intentions toward anyone, how can suffering afflict me since I do no evil deed? Or if I've done something evil, I purify it, have remorse, and don't do it again. Then how can that turn out badly for me? That's the third assurance. And the fourth one is this. Suppose evil does not come. Did I say that right? Suppose evil suppose evil comes to one who does evil. Did I read that right? Okay, good. In other words, if there's karma, if there's retribution, whatever you want to call it, if there are consequences beyond this life, then I'll be in good shape. This is not Pascal's wager. This is the Buddha's wager. Check out Pascal's wager. If you haven't checked it out, it's good to look at. And the fourth assurance, again with this open mind, suppose evil does not come to one who does evil. In other words, when you die, you get off scot-free. As I say as a good Scot. No repercussions for me. Yeah. And then nothing, nobody can catch you now because you just disappeared. Well, what if that's the case? Well, then, right here, I see myself purified in both respects. That is, right in this lifetime, that was the way to go. Cultivate the four immeasurables. Universal Dharma. Believe whatever you like, but these are true. So now I'd like to go through briefly, but concisely, but hopefully not, dumbing down, a Buddhist analysis of these four virtues. They're universal virtues, starting with loving kindness. And I'm drawing from a brilliant 5th century Buddhist scholar, born in Sri Lanka, as I recall, but widely known, the most prominent scholar in the whole Theravada tradition, named Buddhaghosa. And in his Path of Purification, Visuddhimagga, he has what I find is to be a breathtakingly brilliant analysis of these four. They're called Brahma Viharas, divine dwellings, or immeasurables. And so he gives an analysis of each one. And when I first read this, it just took my breath away. I thought, this is some of the most brilliant psychology I've ever seen in my life, with direct ramifications for emotional well-being and balance. So we start with loving kindness. What is it? And why are we saying loving kindness instead of that beautiful four-letter word, love? Love is a many-splendored thing. The problem is, it's too many-splendored because you can love your motorcycle, especially Harley Davidsons, and you can love your mom and your kid and your cat, and you can love disgusting things. You can love all kinds of things, and it just means you like it a lot, including love of God. Amor Dei, well, that's love too, but the word is too big and it covers everything but the kitchen sink. I love my kitchen sink. It's really clean. So that word is overused, and it refers to something really disgusting. I love shooting ducks. It's kind of disgusting. I mean, they're just trying to fly through the air and you blow their brains out. That's not so nice. So loving kindness, well, what's the false facsimile, or what Buddhaghosa calls the near enemy of loving kindness? First of all, we'll just say what it is. What is loving kindness in the Buddhist understanding? And there's a right answer to this. Loving kindness is not an emotion, it's an aspiration. It's not emotional, it's cognitive. And it's a wish, a yearning. May we all find happiness in the causes of happiness. And that includes every sentient being. The little ground squirrel that tried to crawl through my screen window this morning, poked his head in, I said, hi. And he went away. He got my little welcome, and then ground squirrel trying to get in a window. Sentient being. He was looking for something, didn't find it. But find it elsewhere, a little critter. It's an aspiration. May we all be well and happy. Find not only the causes of the happiness, which we all want, but identify and cultivate the causes of happiness. Be it hedonia and eudaimonia, prioritize the one that's really meaningful and not the one that will never satisfy. So that's loving kindness. It's an aspiration, an utterly, profoundly, universally benevolent one. But then it has the tricksters, the false facsimiles, the near enemies, emotion desires that look like loving kindness and they are not. And the near enemy of loving kindness, or the false facsimile, is self-centered attachment, self-centered desire. And when we display this, it often happens with, let's say, for example, men and women. If a man is really attracted to the woman, he wants her to like him. He wants her to comply with his desires because he wants something from her. And he might give flowers, and he might give flattery, and a lot of smiles and hugs, and because he wants something. It's not about her, it's about him. And he sees her as an instrument to his own self-gratification. Well, we all know about that. And what do we call that? Oh, but I love you so much, I can't bear to see you go. I love you so much, stay with me forever. And by the way, don't change, because you're really not nice as you are, but I don't want to see age and sickness, because it's kind of yucky. So please stay as you are, because you're so attractive now, but 20 years from now, I'm not so sure. We call that love. What is that? It's kind of creepy. It's a false facsimile. It looks like love, and it's called love, but it's just this guy trying to get what he wants. And whether it's a man trying to get a woman or a land developer wanting to take some pristine natural preserve and turn it into a condominium complex, or whatever, Or politicians trying to get everybody to like him. Because he wants something from you. He wants to get in power, and you're the instrument for him to get that power. Him or her, of course. Self-centered attachment, it's really a tricky little bugger, because it looks for all the world, if the person is really clever, it looks so much like love. But it's not at all love. It's a false facsimile. It's fool's gold. It's the near enemy, because like an enemy, it masquerades as a friend. I would do anything for you. I would do anything for you, as long as you do what I want. It's proximate. So, and malice is its far enemy. What is that which is diametrically opposed to loving kindness? It's the wish that other people not find happiness. The people on the other side of the political fence, countries you regard as your enemy. When we see the death count, oh good, they have a bigger death count than we did. Oh, that's good. Because they don't look like us, or they have a different political system, or they live over yonder. That all comes from self-centered detachment. My side is good. My side deserves happiness. But your side, not at all, especially if you're trying to get in the way of what I want. All the wars are caused by this. And it's wars between countries, it's wars between spouses and neighborhoods and so forth and so on. Malice, the wish, I don't want you to find happiness. I'll be much pleased if you don't. Its proximate cause of genuine loving kindness is seeing the lovability in beings. That's sometimes really tough, isn't it? Because we, human beings, sometimes behave in very disagreeable ways. Some people do it a lot, and other people do it now and then. But whenever it happens, we behave in really disagreeable ways, driven by our own selfishness, our own greed, hatred, jealousy, our expressions change and so forth. People often don't look lovable at all. That's why when I was a kid, I really liked animals a lot better than humans. I really did. I look at what human beings do to the planet, crapping all over it, whereas the wildlife out there, they're living in harmony. I mean, you know, the carnivores have to eat, but they just eat and then they move on. They don't do serial killing. They don't do ethnic cleansing. They eat because they're hungry. Well, that's what we all do. And if you're a carnivore, you just don't have much choice. Okay, we could linger for the rest of the time on this one, and time is passing quickly. Oh my goodness, it's passing really quickly. Just look deeper. Look deeper. When you see somebody, whether it's a politician or next door neighbor or whatever it may be, and you find, I find nothing lovable in this person at all, what you're seeing is a reflection of your own negative qualities, and they're not lovable. You can't see discussing qualities in other people if you don't have them yourself. Can't even imagine it. So we see other people on occasion as personifications of our own negativities, and we don't like them. We may feel contempt and disdain, hatred even. But no human being is made up of our projections. And every human being wishes for happiness, wishes to be free of suffering, and deserves it. Look upon all sentient beings as a mother looks upon her own child, even when the child is very naughty. That's a proximate cause. And it succeeds when it makes ill will subside. When its antithesis, ill will just fades out. It can't stand the light. The darkness of ill will can't stand the light of loving kindness. And it fails when it produces just more self-centered detachment. My child, my child, my child. Versus your child. Your child doesn't count. My child. And I'm going to read some of these notes just for yourselves. This time is passing so quickly. The fruits of loving kindness, if you cultivate it, because it can be cultivated. It's not just some people are nice and some people are not nice. That's true. But loving kindness is like a bicep. It's something that can be cultivated, like intelligence. It can be cultivated. And the fruits of loving kindness is you see everyone as lovable. You see through the veneer of despicable behavior. And behavior is despicable behavior, but the person isn't. There's a person there that got trapped in a network of mental afflictions and displays awful behavior. But not because that's what they wanted to do when they grew up. You see, everyone is lovable. I mean, look at His Holiness Dalai Lama. If you just want to see, is this possible at all? Just take a long, long look at the Dalai Lama, as I've been doing since 1971. And here's a man that sees everybody as lovable. Everybody is his brother, his sister. It's possible. He cultivated that, and then it manifested that. You see, everybody is lovable without attachment or hostility, and everyone sees you as lovable. Only people whose minds are really warped see the Dalai Lama as anything other than what he is. And those who warp, they just have a political agenda for which he's really, an obstacle. They deserve compassion. To look on the Dalai Lama and see something negative, that's only a commentary on you. And it's really sad, whether it's a government or an individual. He embodies loving kindness. You accumulate great merit, and loving kindness will purify karma that would otherwise cast you into miserable realms of existence. It's a great purifier. Even if you've done great sins, loving kindness is the great purifier. So time is moving so quickly, I need to move a bit quickly too. We go into compassion. Compassion in English often is an emotion. It's often conflated with sympathy. In Buddhism, not an emotion. Nothing wrong with emotions, but compassion, like loving kindness, is conative. It's an aspiration, may we all inclusive. May we all be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. But for that, we need to know what are the causes of suffering. And they're not out there. They seem to be, but they're not. What's happening out there may or may not catalyze suffering, but whether we experience suffering, that's up to us. It's internal. That empowers us in a very, very good way. And the 3 levels of compassion corresponding to 3 levels of suffering. There's blatant suffering. It's pain. It's misery. It's anguish, physical and mental. And when we see people experiencing that, whether children who are just suffering because a missile is just at their school, or whether it's people living in a war zone, which they never asked for, or people don't even have enough to eat, or people who've been abused by anyone at all. You see that in most decent people. You can't help but feel it. And that's empathy. That's good. But if you're just sitting there with tears in your eyes, that's not doing anybody any good. Empathy is the fuel for the arising of compassion, and compassion is an aspiration. And an aspiration leads to activity. There's suffering out there. I empathize with it. I tear up when I think about it. And what can be done? And if something can be done, let's do it. That's it. It goes from motivation to engagement. There's blatant suffering. There's the suffering of change. Very briefly, these are very deep truths. But the suffering of change is even when people are living the high life. They won the jackpot. They're wealthy. They won the jackpot. They're famous. They won the jackpot. They're really powerful and influential. And they're saying, ain't life grand? Let's order another golden toilet. They're just worthy of compassion. Not ridicule, not disdain. They're worthy of compassion because they are clueless that whatever they've got from now on is going to get worse. They're going to get older. That's not fun. Old age is for sissies. We heard about that. And then it gets sick. Well, whether you're really rich or you're really poor, you're still just as sick. And it's just as painful. And then you're going to die. And if you had a really grand life and you have all that stuff, no, don't leave me. And you're grasping onto, like the jerk in the Steve Martin movie. I just want this. I just want to hold on to this. Don't leave me. You're pathetic. And it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor. It's all flattened. Death is a great equalizer. And suffering, the suffering of change, pervasive suffering of conditioned existence. This is core Buddhism, but it's either true or false. The suffering of pervasive existence, or pervasive suffering and conditioned existence, is we identify with our bodies, which are not really me or mine. It's just a body. It came from my sperm and egg of my mom and dad. And all the food that came in, that wasn't mine either. So that's it. This is body, it's a sperm and egg with a lot of ornamentation. But it's not mine. Nobody ever signed over the deed. Okay, now it's yours. It's just a body. And this mind arose in dependence upon the brain. Didn't come from the brain, and it's just a mind. But if I appropriate it, then I can suffer so easily, mentally and physically. And there has to be a, solution for that. And there is. Near enemy of compassion is despair. That which looks like compassion isn't despair. Its far enemy is cruelty. I want you to suffer. I want to give you the causes of suffering. That will give me a lot of satisfaction and joy. That's cruelty. That's cruelty. Its proximate cause is to see the helplessness in those overwhelmed by suffering. They can't help, they're helpless. Compassion arises not simply as empathy, but aspiration. It succeeds when it makes cruelty, its opposite, subside. It fails when it produces despair. And this is a big deal in modern world. I'm in retreat, but I read just the headlines, just to know what's happening out there. Or at least what the media wants us to tell is happening. It's almost all bad news. In every way, it's almost all bad news. And it's very easy to fall into despair. But then we're part of the problem and not part of the solution. Next one, empathetic joy. Its near enemy is hedonism. Empathetic joy is taking delight in one's own, but especially others' joys and their virtues. If you see children playing on a playground and just having a lot of fun, have fun with them. Not by getting in, they won't like that. But stand on the side, like the old grandpa, like me, sitting, watching. I used to do this when I was living in Santa Barbara and, teaching there. But sometimes I go to little kids' baseball games, and I just sit in the bleachers. I don't have any kids that play baseball, but I just watch them having fun. And I got empathetic joy just seeing them have a really good time. That's fine, that's empathetic joy. People enjoying the fruits of happiness that come up, but also really rejoicing in any act of virtue. Whether it's by a great holy being like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, I think his virtue is kind of unimaginable. A person giving street directions to somebody who's lost in a big city, and anything in between. Any act of kindness, pause, attend to it, make it real, rejoice in it. It's not that hard, and it's a virtue. Its near enemy is hedonism, just taking delight in, mundane pleasures and thinking this is what it's all about, and boy, ain't life grand. Look at my new cell phone. I got a cell phone. I don't. But look at my new iPhone 16. It's terrific. It's got artificial intelligence. Now I have a phone that's smarter than me. It's fantastic. Really? Really? Is that what life is about? To get the 16, it's a 16, I got a 16. I got a 17. Oh, I win. That's hedonism. It's stupid. Its far enemy is envy and cynicism. When you see other people have something you want and you don't like it, and you wish they didn't have it, they don't deserve that, I should have it. Or just more blanket, universal, life sucks. And all those kids are all just going to get old and die. What's the big deal? Just cynicism, where you don't rejoice in anything at all because you painted everything with a black tar brush. And even when there is virtue, you just smear it over with your own tar. Don't even see it. It's invisible to you. It's a cognitive problem, too. Reality is presenting it, and you don't see it. Its proximate cause is to see its proximate cause is being success, simply seeing them succeed. A kid who gets into the college that he or she wanted. Parents who really longed to have a child and finally they got pregnant. A person striving to get a job and then got it. People enjoying a vacation, simple things, let alone people really enjoying bringing goodness to the world and taking delight in that and delight with them. It's just seeing it, and then it catalyzes empathetic joy. It succeeds when any impulse of envy or cynicism subside, and it fails when it just produces hedonism. And so then moving on to the final one more page turner. Act 2. Oh yeah, just a note from the great Tibetan master Tsongkhapa from the 14th, 15th century. He said to rejoice in the good deeds of oneself and others is the best way to create good karma. Accumulate merit, virtue, with the least effort. So it's not only taking delight in other people's virtue, that's wonderful, but something we often don't give ourselves the opportunity to because maybe we're embarrassed or don't think we should. Looking back on our own good deeds, whether it's meditating in solitude, or a friend of mine, he just got an email yesterday. He's an Indian man, and he had a very comfortable life living in Sacramento. Very bright, got the best education in India, in a field and he had a really comfortable income and good home, and he gave it all up to go to Bihar, the poorest state in all of India, and found underprivileged children in Bihar and started a school for them. And I think he's happier now than he ever was in his life. Just yesterday I got the email from him. That's just sheer good. And I've seen the photos of his kids. He's just doing wonders for them. And it was just to make his own life meaningful and bring as much good to the world as he could. That's empathetic joy. So rejoice in that, in others, but also looking back. Have you ever done any good? Have you been a good parent? Have you been kind? Have you been generous on occasion? Look back and just take delight in that. Take delight in that. That increases your virtue. That's it. Impartiality. Okay, we can't skip this one, even though time is getting slim. Impartiality is unconditional caring about others. Human and non-human. Unconditional. They appear to be very pleasant. They appear to be your friend. They appear to be virtuous. Easy. They appear to not like you, and they're not virtuous, and they're living really kind of awful lives. Look at them. Their behavior is not the same. One is good, one is bad. But to see through the veneer of pleasant, unpleasant, virtuous, they like me, they don't like me, that's all surface waves. A person who's an enemy one year can be your friend the next year. A person who's a friend last year can be your enemy, and the friend can become totally indifferent and a stranger 5 years from now. It's all in flux, but what isn't in flux is every sentient being like ourselves wishes for happiness and wants to be free of suffering. But out of delusion, as Shantideva says, we hasten after the causes of our own suffering, thinking it's going to turn out well, and out of delusion we destroy the causes of our own happiness as if they were our enemies. Well, when people do that, you see them engaging in atrocious behavior. They think it's going to turn out well, and they'll be really happy. If that doesn't make you burst into tears, I think maybe you should think about it a bit more. And then stop crying and do something. And develop impartiality. Unconditional loving kindness, unconditional compassion, unconditional empathetic joy. That's impartiality. And it was one of the first two meditations that my first meditation teacher taught me. Impartiality. He said, Alan, cultivate this. Because pretty much all the misery in the world comes from people not having this. Attachment to my side, aversion to the other side. Whether it's between spouses, in a family, a community, internationally, and so on. You're not like me. And I'm over here. But the ones like me, there's the one I take care of. That's it. You want to wonder why do we have all the wars with all the knowledge we have? Because of this. Artificial intelligence is not going to solve this. I just heard a talk where this guy, a big shot from Silicon Valley, saying, artificial intelligence can have an IQ of 400. Einstein only had 162. Artificial intelligence is going to solve all of our problems. Yeah, when's that going to start? When's it going to start? When's artificial intelligence going to help us how to be not hateful and not greedy and not stupid? When's it going to start? And the answer is this guy living in a fantasy world. They think technology can solve all our problems. Sorry, but he's just plain stupid. There's no evidence that's true. It gives us iPhone 16, that's what it gives us. And a lot of excellent techniques for developing hedonia. And it gives us nothing for genuine well-being, nothing for virtue, nothing for ethics. So don't take refuge in technology. It's a fool's errand. The near enemy of impartiality is aloof indifference. It looks like impartiality, but it's, I equally don't care about anybody. But I'm very equal here. Nothing to write home about. This person's a psychopath. Attachment to the near, aversion to those who are far, are its far enemies, the diametric opposite. The proximate cause of arousing, cultivating impartiality is seeing the responsibility of one's own deeds. that how we view others is ever so often, if not always, a reflection of our own minds. Ever so often. And we say, no, I was just being objective. And yet, what are you seeing that is not a reflection of your own mind? Whether it's virtue or vice. Have you ever witnessed a vice in somebody else that you absolutely don't have never experienced? So it's taking responsibility for one's own deeds. If other people are treating unkindly, you might just do a little reality check. And how have I been treating them? We're not always mea culpa. It's not always our fault. But just look again. Did you contribute in any way, directly or indirectly? It's taking full responsibility for our own conduct. It succeeds when attachment and aversion subside. It fails when it produces aloof indifference. I give up. The hell with all of you. You're not my problem. I'm going to stay home. I'm going to find some cave someplace. I'm going to close the door. And everybody, don't bug me. That's not what we're doing here. I will tell you with absolute certainty, every single person here, nothing like that remotely. Living in solitude, yeah. Cultivating the four immeasurables, cultivating virtue, cultivating wisdom. That's what hermitages are for. It's not an expression of aloof indifference. If it is, this is not place for you. That's not what we're doing here. There's a liturgy that I'm translating in English, which Tibetans chant very, very commonly. And in English, may all beings be endowed with happiness and its causes. May all beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all beings never be parted from well-being, free of dissatisfaction. May all beings dwell in impartiality, free of attachment and hostility for those near and far. So this is the universal Dharma. That's it. There's nothing particularly Buddhist about that. Left open the door. Is there hereafter or is there not? Left it wide open. Check it out. But it might be good to check it out before you die so it doesn't come as a surprise. I can imagine a person so convinced, oh, I'll be annihilated. And then, 5 minutes after he said, oh, bummer. Why didn't somebody tell me? I should be dead by now. It should be rest in peace. And this is not peaceful at all. This is total bummer. Why didn't they tell me? And you're kind of leaving on a long vacation, and you didn't even bring a sandwich. No preparation. Not a good way to check out. At least check out with the four immeasurables, and then whatever happens, it'll be fine. There's objectless, four immeasurables, where we tend to view others, human beings and everybody else, as really out there, existing in and of themselves, inherently existent, independent, totally objective, and I'm over here, unrelated. Not true. Now we're getting at the physicists, the participatory universe, not only with the universe at large, but with each other. All of our relationships are participatory. I'm not just viewing you objectively as you are from your own side. And somebody objectively from their own side, intrinsically, autonomously, doesn't exist at all. Nobody's independent. No man is an island. We've heard that one before. And this means we're all interrelated. And so the very notion of striving for my well-being, independent of everybody else, is nuts. Because it's built on a fantasy that I'm independent. And therefore my well-being is independent. It's not, never has been. So viewing how we are all arising as dependently related, and no one is inherently, independently existent, not the saint or the sinner, gives a much deeper compassion. Much, much deeper compassion. Very briefly, I've now just gone one over. There's much beyond this. That was a prelude, but the time is up. But there's something beyond this. You can read it in the notes, and I've given you at the end of the notes a link to 8 weeks of teaching that I gave 14 years ago in Phuket, the first 8 retreat I led in Phuket, Thailand, on 3 modes of shamatha, a very good basis for emotional intelligence, and then really unpacking the 4 immeasurables. We had 8 weeks to do it. It was the first of the 8-week retreat I led in Phuket. It was really quite wonderful. I remember it vividly. And that's a free download. So anybody who's heard, well, that brief introduction, you might be questioning, but how do you do it? How do you do it? It sounds good. Well, we're about to do a session, but then if you're really interested, then there's 8 weeks. That's a banquet. 6 days a week, leading guided meditations, giving teachings to really unpack these. The 4 immeasurables, the 4 greats, where we bring these aspirations and turn it into a resolve. Great compassion, great loving kindness. I'll let you check it out for yourself. It's extraordinary. And then beyond that, we go into the great perfection in 3.5 pages of notes. We do the spectrum from the 4 immeasurables as taught in the Pali canon, universal dharma. Nobody has a monopoly on those, but in Buddhism they're really unpacked in a very brilliant way, all the way then to Dzogchen. I love joining earth and sky. And the sky is Dzogchen, the great perfection. And the great perfection is finally and ultimately responding to the Delphic oracle. Know thyself. Who are you? And you give a first flush. Oh, I'm a woman, I'm a man, I'm born here. This is my story. All very well. And when you finish your story, then I'll come back and ask you, who are you? Yeah, that was a good story. But that's a very short story. And you don't know when it's going to end. But who are you? Is there anything more to you than that? And this can be a matter of belief, but for the contemplatives, it becomes a matter of knowledge. That's not the whole story. This is not the whole book of your life. This is just one chapter. Who are you? This means you need to know who were you before you came into this life. And who will you be? Who are you fashioning that you will be beyond this life? Something deeper, a bigger story, a never-ending story. Who are you? And you cut through everything you've identified with. Your body, your mind, your consciousness, your subtle stream of consciousness. And in the great perfection, you cut through that, all these layers, to a ground that's always there. Pristinely, primordially pure, the fountain of all well-being, the fountain of all virtue, who you really are. Know that. Who are you really, finally, ultimately? Take away all the onion layers and look right into the core, the ultimate ground, and you'll find you are divine. And all the religions of the world have different ways of saying that. We call it Buddha nature. But you are divine, and this is your birthright. Realize that, and compassion will arise spontaneously. You won't be able to help it. So that's the big picture. And I went on just 4 minutes after, 5 minutes after. I have to, good boy. But I have, I'm just the runner-up, she's the main act, and I can't cut into her time. So let's find a comfortable position. And these are called Ghataka sessions. I left my iPhone 13, oh, the shame. I left my iPhone 13, the dinosaur. I left that at home so I don't have a timer. So I'm just kind of wing it, something like 20 minutes or so. But let's walk the walk right now. Let's see if loving kindness is something that can be cultivated. Or is it just something built in, like your height or your genes, skin color. Let's see. Please find a comfortable position. We so often live in our heads. It's a very cramped, claustrophobic space. Let your awareness descend, come out of your head, down to the ground, this great earth, and your contact with it. And just feel these tactile sensations of your contact with Mother Earth. These sensations of the earth element, of solidity. Then let your awareness fill the space of your body, this whole tactile field of sensations. Be mindfully present throughout this entire space. Experience of the sensations of the breath throughout the whole body. And when the breath flows in, arouse, freshen up, arouse your attention. Be vividly, poignantly present in the present moment. Nowhere to go. The future doesn't exist yet. The past is already gone. We just have this present moment. Experience it nakedly. What is reality dishing up to you right now? With each in-breath, arouse, freshen up, illuminate your awareness, vividly present. And with each out-breath, relax deeply in body and mind. Whatever thoughts arise, release them with a sigh of relief. Release all the thoughts about the past, present, and future. And relax in the body, releasing tension. And as you're vividly aware of your presentness, your beingness in this present moment, experience in the field of the body everything in motion. The whole body fizzing with motion, your mind in motion, thoughts, images, memories. But within the motion of the surrounding environment, your body and your mind, can you sense something that is still? Unmoved by all the movements, like a lighthouse on a rocky knoll, out in the midst of a stormy sea. Everything around, the wind, the water, everything in motion, but the lighthouse does not move. Do you sense anything that is still and luminous? We call that awareness, not your mind. We call it awareness, simple, luminous, cognizant. Consciousness. Can you see it? Can you experience it? Can you isolate it from all the movements? In this simple awareness of being aware, transcending the limitations of your body, your mind, your personality, your personal history. Simple, unadorned, luminous, cognizant awareness. You've taken one big step to knowing who you are. And rest there. And you may ask of yourself, internally, quietly, what do you seek? What is your heart's desire? What do you yearn for in this lifetime and all possible future lifetimes? What would make you truly happy, fulfilled, content? Envision your own genuine well-being. What is the happiness that you seek? from your innermost depths. Set out or set in on this vision quest, the vision of your own flourishing, and see what comes to mind. What would make you truly happy? Through thick and thin, through all the vicissitudes of aging, sickness, and death, what would make you truly happy? And then embrace yourself in a cloak of loving kindness for yourself. Allow the aspiration to arise. May I realize my innermost aspirations, my most exalted motivations, my ideal. May I find the happiness that I seek. I am deserving and wish for it. This is what the Buddha taught. If you want to develop loving kindness, begin with yourself. If you can't be loving towards yourself, how can you possibly be loving towards anyone else? Because in a way, they are all reflections of the multiple facets of yourself. And rather than bringing this to mind as some lofty and distant goal, which you may never realize, now use this creative power of your own imagination and imagine here and now your closest facsimile. What would it be like? Imagine here and now fulfilling your innermost desire. Imagine it. And then holding that vision in the first of a fourfold vision quest, imagine now, first facing the reality, there's no possible way you can realize such well-being all on your own with no help from anyone. Impossible. So in the same spirit of self-directed loving kindness, bring to mind, if you will, what would you love to receive from others, those who are near and far? In the short term and the long term, what would you love to receive from others to enable you to fulfill your own heart's desire? And imagine it. And imagine receiving it. Imagine reality rising up to meet you. Blessings flowing in upon you by way of fellow sentient beings, by the way of just the way reality unfolds. Imagine reality rising up to meet you as you bring forth your most authentic, reality-based aspiration. Imagine that occurring right now. In Buddhism, we say this is receiving the blessings of all the Buddhas, receiving the blessings of your Guru. Imagine that flow of blessing is constant, flowing in upon you from all sides. And imagine flourishing under the loving care of others. We face a third reality as we bring forth a third quest, and that is this type of well-being can never ever be realized without profound and meaningful transformation taking place from within. It can't just be with a lot of help from our friends. So we set out on a third vision. What kind of a person would you love to become? Imbued with what wonderful qualities? Free of what harmful qualities? What kind of a person would you love to be in order to fulfill your innermost desire? Imagine it. And if you can imagine it, it could be true. If you desire it, it will be true. Imagine it is true here and now. Move boldly into this field of possibility and imagine them being actual right now. And as we turn to the fourth quest, we begin again with facing a reality. We've heard it so many times from so many sources. No man, no woman is an island. None of us have ever existed independently. We do not now, and we never will. Our very existence, our very identity is intertwined with everyone around us. It's a reality, it's a truth. And fully being aware of this interrelatedness between ourselves and everyone around us, those who are near and those who are far, short-term and long-term, we raise a fourth question, the final one. In order to bring the greatest meaning, the greatest joy, satisfaction to your own life, what would you love to offer to the world around you? To alleviate the suffering and pain of others, to bring others joy. What would you love to offer to the world? In order to bring the greatest possible meaning to your own life, your well-being, others' well-being, utterly intertwined. Envision it. What uniquely could you bring to the world in your unique spot in this universe? What would you love to offer to the world? And if you like symbolism, imagine your own inner purity. We call it the Buddha nature, pristine awareness. Imagine this as an orb of light at your heart. This indestructible orb of sheer primordial purity, the fountainhead of all virtues. And as you breathe out, imagine from this fathomless, inexhaustible source of light at your heart, with every out-breath, imagine rays of light extending in all directions, above and below, to all the quarters around about. And imagine this light taking on the form of whatever can be of service to others, to alleviate their suffering, their pain, their fear, their hunger, their thirst, and to bring each one joy, happiness, fulfillment. With every out-breath, let this light ride upon the aspiration, may every single one without exception. First in my own proximity, in this neighborhood, may each one be well and happy. May each one find happiness and its causes. May I assist them. And imagine this light forming a field of light, a sphere of light, with every out-breath flowing outwards, filling everyone in this room. May everyone here find the happiness they seek from their innermost depths. Find happiness and its causes. And imagine this light from your heart enveloping them, nurturing, sustaining, bringing each one along their own path. And as you continue to breathe out, expand this field to this whole area, this field, this area of Crestone, for those of us here in Colorado. And envelop everyone here, human and non-human. May each one find happiness and its causes. Imagine the light enveloping, embracing, sustaining them. And expand outwards to the north, the east, south, and west. An ever-growing field or sphere of light, the light of loving kindness. Everyone in this valley, and out over the mountains, above and below. May each one be well and happy. And imagine them experiencing it, the happiness they've been seeking. It continues expanding with every out-breath, out over this region, out over this state. No borders out there. They're all imaginary. Out over the southwest, a field of light, of kindness, of goodness, of happiness and virtue, of harmony. And out over the continent, out over the sea, may each one find happiness and its causes. To the north and the south, enveloping South America and everyone who dwells within. Out over the Atlantic, out over the Pacific. The creatures under the water, above the water, upon the water. And then let this sphere encompass the whole earth, this precious home of ours. May we all find happiness in the causes of happiness. This is our home. These are our neighbors, our brothers and sisters. May we all be well, living in harmony. And now finally, like a supernova, imagine this sphere of light, then suddenly expanding in all directions throughout the full extent of space, permeating 2 trillion galaxies and all the beings who dwell within them. All of space. With the aspiration, may everyone without exception find happiness and the causes of happiness. May it be so. Imagine it being so. And then finally, imagine this vast field of light extending throughout all of space now, in an instant, all converging back into the sphere at your heart. The whole world vanishes, and there's only this light at your heart. And that light dissolves into open space and rests there just for a moment. a direct path to knowing who you are. And let's bring this session to a close. Well, not so. So that's what I have to share this morning. There's a bit more in the notes, but you can read those. And now I'd like to turn this over to Yangshila. And would you like my microphone, or do we have a second?
You're fine.
Oh, you have that right here, yeah.
So can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Good. So first, I just want to extend this enormous welcome to all of you. It is just truly cause for rejoicing to feel this chapel so filled with our community, I'm sure, from Crestone and further afield. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Eva Natanya, also known as Yangchen Ösel, and offered my help to found our center 4 years ago here, Myeosam Tenling of the Center for Contemplative Research here in Crestone, in the midst of the pandemic in 2020. And what I want to share with you in just a few minutes now is just sort of like the overall arc of what's happened for us with the help of many, many people around the world, both through volunteer work, through financial support, and then, of course, our retreatants, which are the core of what we do here, which is to provide the facilities for long-term retreat. And with no retreatants, we wouldn't have a center. So my deep, deep gratitude to all of those retreatants present here, those who've been with us in the past. It is the beauty of what is taking place here is really very much due to the teachings we've received, to our lineage, and to the dedicated practice of our retreatants. And I wanted to add, just for the sheer universality of it and the spirit of this meditation, right now we have retreatants in this very room from Germany, Spain, Russia, Canada, Australia, the United Kingdom, Brazil, and the United States as well. So that is the kind of community. We've had other countries, Mexico and so on, in the course of our 4 years. So that, and Italy, the kind of international quality of our retreat community at any given time is tangible. And then to connect that to the very real process of evolution that we have as an organization. Many of you know that we're in the midst of a sustenance campaign right now, and very much due to Courtney Johnson, our executive director, who's here, her vision, working with her team, that we're not in the startup phase anymore. We're in the sustenance phase. And for those of you who know the process of retreat, it takes time. And it's precisely that this deep transformation that has to take place, not just over the course of months, but over the course of years, to go deeper and deeper. And some retreatants who have, let's say, 6 months or 3 months, they go away, they come back, and the next retreat is a whole nother layer. So as an organization, we need to have the stability that we can guarantee our retreatants will still be here 3 years from now, 6 years from now, 10 years from now, 30 years from now. And the kind of scientific research that we want to do and have already begun in collaboration with our retreatants, with retreatants as full participants in first, second, third person scientific research, that also takes time because, as many of you know, our retreatants are contemplatives in training. None of us claims to be some master yet. And so it takes time to develop both the contemplative capacity and the scientific innovation of even how to ask the questions for that collaboration to come together in its full fruition. And so, as all of you know, a nonprofit has to depend on donations. And we love to offer Dharma for free. We rejoice in being able to offer Dharma for free. A session like today, for those of you who've been following the Gattaca monthlies, for those of you who have been following Lama Allen's teachings every 6 weeks this year, as you know, this is all offered online, even on YouTube, broadly and widely. Because we don't want to be putting a price on Dharma. It is literally priceless. But we also, as an organization, know that hours of meditation are not a product. It can't be sold. And so for our organization to sustain itself, we very much need to follow the kind of communal, and now it's a global community, interdependence between full-time practitioners and the community of patronage that through the centuries, whether in Christian monasteries, whether in Buddhist monasteries, I won't start naming how many cultures in which this interdependence between those who've given themselves full-time, even lifelong commitment to simplicity, poverty, and full-time religious practice, contemplative practice, and the community of those who, for various reasons, need to still have responsibilities in the world, have income in the world, and then we depend on each other in that way. So this has felt like a wonderful opportunity to explain that in more words than we can put on our website or in an email announcement. We're so incredibly grateful to an anonymous match donation, which means that we can have that push right now to reach 60,000 in our raising, and then we've been promised if we reach that, there will be more funds unlocked in the match. And also, what we very much depend on is those recurring donations. And am I correct that every recurring donation is going toward the match right now, or?
We hadn't set it up that way.
Okay.
But we could do that.
Yeah, so I'm not directly involved in finances anymore. But I just want you to know how much both the match is important and we need it in a sustainable way so that we can count on things the way we would count on subscriptions or some kind of regular tuition, and we are in the process of developing programs for education in the future, even long-term teacher trainings, that ultimately we can have tuition-based courses. But as an organization, we will always depend on donations, and I just want you to feel the joy of that, actually, the way that it creates this porous community of interdependence. So of course, Lama Allen and I always offer our teaching and guidance here for free. I wanted that to be clear to everybody. And we need a staff, which we already have, a small staff that's able to support the organization. And that's essential, as you all know. And those need to be sustainable jobs. And just a last note for all of you here in person that we are seeking volunteers here in Crestone, and it tends to be things that we need intermittently but consistently over time. And so if you have an interest in that, of just being available, oftentimes it's giving a ride to a retreatant who has to go to a doctor's appointment or other things like that, please come to Courtney after this. So
Thank you.
I'm sure there's more I could have said, but I don't want to go.
Does anybody want to write a question?
I'm sure there are many more online as well.
Yes, I'll let you know what pops up in the chat, but here's one that I thought was appropriate.
Oh, this is a wonderful question, and one we've had very much in mind. I know Courtney and Yangchen and Anita and many others around the world. And here's the question. It's extremely relevant. Our youth needs help with mental balance. But how do we educate the parents in order to get support? Before I co-founded with Yangchen this Center for Contemplative Research, very shortly after I left teaching at UC Santa Barbara, I established the Santa Barbara Institute for Consciousness Studies. Is that right? Is that the name of it? Yeah. It's a long time ago. And the very first speaker we had was outstanding. We invited a geneticist from UCLA, but her actual focus was ADHD, diagnosing and treating ADHD. She gave an outstanding talk. It was just a fantastic way, the first speaker for the Santa Barbara Institute, which has now been up for 21 years. And she commented that if you have a child or children who have ADHD, and you'd like to help them, at least ameliorate the symptoms, if not, or even possibly heal it, because it's not hardwired. But what we tend to do is just hit the kids with drugs, which treats the symptoms and never gets to the underlying cause. But she gave a brilliant talk on ADHD, and she spoke of interventions that psychologists know about, but she said, if your child has ADHD and you'd like to help, you can't just leave it on the shoulders of the child. It has to be for the whole family. Because if the child's living in a chaotic environment where the television's on and helter-skelter and bickering and shouting and chaos, it doesn't matter what you give to the child, except for just hit him over the head with drugs. It won't work. It has to be a family-united effort to support the child, to help the child come over these attentional imbalances and develop attentional intelligence. It has to be the whole family. And that makes sense, doesn't it? Well, if that's true for ADHD, it's true for everything else. That it comes back to this simple truth that no child is an island. You live in interdependence with your family. You may like it or lump it, but there it is. You're all living under the same roof. And then there's the broader, there's the community, there's the school. So it has to be an interrelated response to that. So years ago I gave a talk. It was one of my favorite talks I've ever given because it was totally unexpected to me. It was at the American School in Mexico City. And I was invited to give a talk to all the kids in the school from K through middle school and middle school through high school. So two groups, because the 5-year-olds are not very much like 18-year-olds. And it was joy because just before I walked in the door, I threw away the notes that I brought with me. They don't want to hear about that. I wanted to talk about William James. I think but kids don't care about William James. This gringo who died a century ago. Why would they care about him? And so we just, for these 2 sessions with the kids, we just talked about what would really make them happy. And the whole thing was dialogue. I never taught them anything. What do I know? You know? But the beautiful thing there, it wasn't only the kids, it was also the teachers and the administration, and there were parents there as well. Now that's the way you heal. And in healing the child, you can heal the family. The whole family may not have ADHD, but the whole family, everybody in the family, definitely has issues. And so all for one, one for all. So how to approach this? We've given a lot of thought, and a lot of it is just seminal at this point, but with a full commitment, this is what we wish to do. And that is bring in this multifaceted 6-fold matrix of cultivating the whole range of intelligence and not getting hung up on IQ. I mean, there are people with brilliant IQ and they're miserable to the point of suicide. So that's no solution, just being really smart and being a good problem solver. Leave that to artificial intelligence. They'll play chess better than we do and solve problems a lot better than we do. But computers aren't happy. They're not even conscious. And so a group effort. And that is, there's a vision here, a whole system of cultivating 6 modes of intelligence. And on that, you layer all the other education you'll get in school. As the Dalai Lama has often commented, modern education is almost entirely oriented towards hedonic well-being, towards material success, to gaining positions of influence, to gaining reputation, and so forth. It's almost all of it, and it's all over the world. It's America, it's communist China, it's South America, it's Russia, it's everywhere. Modern education is looking outwards, outwards and outwards, and it's always competitive. And that's what got us into this mess, and that's not what's going to get us out of this mess. But by offering education that really helps people discover the sources of well-being within, not instead of material success. You want your kids to be successful, to be financially secure. You want them to be happy. Of course, that's important. But it's worth nothing if you have no inner well-being. You're dissatisfied as ever, but now you're famous and rich and powerful. So what? But is it important to have enough to eat, to not be downtrodden, to have the respect of others? Yes, it is, but it's not enough. So we need two types of vacation, and they need to be interfaced with each other. The children need to be interfaced with the parents. And we have a vision here. It's very specific on recognizing 6 modes of imbalances, cognitive and all the way through, and how to address them. But it's a spectrum from debilitating psychosis all the way up to Buddhahood, whether or not you believe in Buddha. But it's a whole spectrum, from debilitating psychosis to being normal, whoopee-doo, to developing exceptional intelligence, exceptional well-being. So we have a vision, it's a matrix, it's practical, but we're just starting out here. Yes, we're up and running, but it's still kind of embryonic here, But bringing this out into the school system, we're already begun here in Crestone. We've started, Anita has begun here in Crestone, at invitation. We're not evangelists trying to push our worldview on anybody else, but we are offering a matrix of well-being that Christians can practice, and atheists and Jews and everybody else, because it's religion-free. The Dalai Lama wrote a book, Beyond Religion. Well, that's kind of what we're doing. I'm religious, many people here are religious, but that's not what we're promoting. Promoting something that has no borders to it. So this could be implemented in school systems around the world and complement the excellent education they're getting in other ways. And then just a few days ago, I thought, you remember freshman courses that you go to college and you have to take a course for all the incoming undergraduates, kind of to set the stage for the next 4 years? This same sixfold matrix, incoming college students, teaching them, develop wise desires, be ethical with each other, develop your attention skills. You won't be able to get an education if you can't focus. Develop cognitive skills. So when we have politicians and others who would fool us, dupe us, deceive us, manipulate us, we don't let them. And that's not a partisan statement. I don't want to be manipulated by Democrats or Republicans. I don't want to be manipulated. I don't want to be lied to. And I want to be able to distinguish what's a lie and what's not a lie. That's cognitive intelligence. But I want to do it being cool. Emotional intelligence. Not getting my knickers in a twist. Especially men. It's terrible when you get your knickers in a twist. It's really, ugh. And there's such a thing as spiritual intelligence that's not locked into any religion. It's just asking the deepest questions. So all the way through, kindergartners, it's not too soon. I was asking 5-year-olds, what do you think would really make you happy? And when they saw that I wasn't being judgmental and there wasn't a right answer, first one hand went up there in that school in Mexico. And then when I just said, cool, and we had a conversation, then 2 hands went up. After a while, it's a forest of hands. All these things, I have an idea. Good, let's talk. And then likewise for the junior high and high schoolers, but likewise for the incoming freshmen. And then likewise for the slow starters like me, where I recommenced my undergraduate education when I was 34, and finished when I was 36. Slow starter, like the tortoise that, but it gets over the finish line sooner or later. It has to be education for everybody, for the parents, for the children, for the teenagers, the college students. Wouldn't it be wonderful if everybody in political power had some real training in cultivating intelligence? Wouldn't that be fantastic? If maybe even like in public service, like what's it called? Like working for the government. Don't you have to pass a test, right? And if you don't pass it, you can't get the job? Wouldn't that be wonderful? Politicians had to pass a test of sanity? Because they're really a mischief when they bring severe mental imbalances into politics. Because it's just damaging to them, but it's damaging to so many other people. So politicians need it. People in the business world, they are the princes of the modern era. In the Renaissance, it was the princes, the princes of Italy and the wealthy people of Italy. Well, now it's Bill Gates and Elon Musk and, the other ones. They are the princes. They wield enormous power. Wouldn't it be wonderful if they were sane and really wish for the well-being and could do so much good with their wealth, so much good with their reputation, so much good with their power? Wouldn't that be marvelous? But it has to be cultivated, because if we let our children grow up like weeds, well, very few of them will flower. A lot of them can turn into tumbleweeds. And so, all together. Invite the parents in so they're hearing what you give to the kids. And they say, but I want some too. I didn't get this when I was a kid. But it's never too late to be a student. I didn't finish my doctorate until I was 45. And I had people in my classes at Santa Barbara. I remember one woman in her 60s. Never too late. So that was kind of beating around the bush, but that's what I think we need to do. It has to be all together and bring the parents to the dialogue. So it's transparent. Especially this is a religious organization. This is a Buddhist, largely Buddhist, but the Dalai Lama said also teach view, meditation, and conduct of Christianity. So we have a person here very capable of doing that, and we will invite more. But people need to know that anything coming out of the CCR, reaching out to education at all levels, that we are not promoting a religion here. Buddhism is the best religion for me. I know I'm home. I'm not going anywhere. This is my home. But for Christians, that's their home. And for people who just said, I'm non-committable, I'm not sure about religion, but I know I want to be a good person. And I know I want my kids to grow up sane and healthy and happy. That I know. So is this for me, or is this only for Buddhists or religious people? At the injunction of the Dalai Lama, he's my guru, he said, make it for everybody. You're coming from Buddhists, but offer what's universal. Oh, like, the four immeasurables. Core Buddhism, absolutely core Buddhism. And it's core universal. So that's it. That's my little response to a huge question.
Do you have time for one from Zoom?
Sure, of course, yeah.
Okay. Can you use loving kindness as an object in shamatha meditation?
Yes, the phrasing is not quite what I want, but yet I know the meaning. Loving kindness is an object. Like, there's loving kindness, and I'm going to meditate on loving kindness. Loving kindness, I think you're totally cool. I'm really all for you. But everybody have it. No, that doesn't work that way. Loving kindness is not an object. Mindfulness of breathing, the breathing is the object. There are many meditations in which you're focusing on an object. That's perfectly good. The question that I'll rephrase is it possible to cultivate loving kindness as a meditative practice in which the object, what are you attending to? What you're attending to is sentient beings. And a variation on the theme, because Buddhism really has practical methods for this that have been tried and tested for centuries. So it's not an experimental, gimmick. Another method is to start the cultivation of loving kindness where we really need it in our world, where low self-esteem, self-hatred, self-loathing is so common. People feeling, I'm not worthy of happiness, I'm not even a good person. You have to get over that. You may have bad qualities, but you're not intrinsically a bad person. Nobody is. Cultivating loving kindness for yourself, as we did. And then when you see, this is genuine, I know I have faults, and I want to be a better person day by day. But today, with all my fleas and all my faults, I'm already worthy of happiness. May I find happiness. And you embrace yourself in this warm cloak of loving kindness for yourself. And then you extend it out where it's easy. Your loved ones, your friends. If you have a harmonious family, your family. And you embrace them. The cloak gets larger. Because it's easy for them. These people love you. You love them. Well, just like you, just like me, may you find happiness. And then you extend that out over the other people in the neighborhood, including strangers. It doesn't matter whether I know them or not. They want happiness just like me. And may these people I don't know, may they also have happiness. And you extend further until you get to the people that you found really difficult. Maybe it's politicians you see on television. Maybe it's a really gnarly neighbor, or maybe it's your boss or somebody in the workplace. This person is so disagreeable, has so many unlikable qualities, it's difficult to be in the same room with this person. That's because they have mental afflictions. That's because they have craving, they have hostility, they have delusion. Join the club. I'm a full standing member of that club. I'm not free of any of those. A work in progress. Contemplative training, if you like. But they too, why couldn't they be free? May those who are really suffering from their own mental afflictions, their narcissism, their selfishness, their greed, their hatred, their pettiness, narrow-mindedness, these are mental afflictions, but they weren't born that way. They got that way. And may they be free. May they be free. And imagine them without the encumbrances of their own mental afflictions and behavioral patterns that are so disagreeable. Imagine them. And so you start from yourself, you extend out to your loved ones, you extend out to the strangers that you don't know at all, but that doesn't matter, they're still equally worthy. And then finally, those disagreeable people. And I'll give an analogy as we're now running out of time, but I think it's a very powerful analogy. Imagine you're a doctor in a psychiatric ward. You're a psychiatrist. And it's for people who are really seriously mentally ill, so it's, they come to live there. It's a mental asylum. And you have some people who are just maybe there for a short time because they've got, some neuroses that's really hard to bear. But they're there, you give them a room. And other people much more seriously ill. And some people may be really disabled by psychosis, schizophrenia, whatever it may be. But you have the whole spectrum, from people having kind of a really bad day, and they can be back home in a few days. And you look at them, and you're here as a doctor. That means, above all, don't do no harm and do your very best to heal everybody here. But you better not prefer the people who are not very ill. And then find really disagreeable, oh, that guy's so psychotic, I can't stand the guy. He's yucky. Then you have to leave. You find another line of work. It's those people who are the most ill and probably display some pretty disagreeable behavior. They are the most in need. And you don't look at the surface. You look through the surface and say this person, and maybe genetically caused. This person didn't choose to be this way. And not because he's a bad person, he's been really terrible in his conduct. There are a lot of genetically prone kind of diseases. So here we are. And the Bodhisattva is said to be everyone's friend. They don't know that this person is their friend. Sorry for the emotion coming up, silly. But the Bodhisattva is everybody's friend. To the agreeable and the disagreeable, the virtuous and the non-virtuous. Because it's especially those who are really troubled and manifest in behavior. They're in the most need of our compassion. And the people they encounter, they probably hardly ever find anybody who feels compassion for them. They may be people who admire them, adulate them, idolize them. They will encounter people who despise them. But neither one of those is helpful. How often do they meet a person who is compassionate for them? So I'll end on one note. And this is the final one. Ajahn Chah was a Thai meditation master living out in the forest with his monks. Very simple. Went back to the lifestyle of the Buddha and his disciples way back when. Very simple. Forest monks, forest dwelling monks. And in his little community of contemplatives in training, like what we have here, there was one monk who was just a pain in the butt. He was just disagreeable. He was a thorn in everybody's flesh. Because the other ones are all pretty good, And so one of the good ones came to Ajahn Chah and said, Master Bhante, everybody knows this guy's just such a pain. If you would just ask him to leave, we'll be really fine here. The rest of us are cool. But this guy, you know better than anybody else. Can't you just ask him to leave? And Ajahn Chah said, the rest of you can leave, but he's the one I'm keeping. And on that note, we end. Thank you all.